Good afternoon and welcome again to Friday at Fran's. Today I mentioned a couple weeks ago that we were going to look at sewing at knits, but there's a few things I want to say before I get to sewing this morning. First of all of our fall classes, September through December, are up online already. Our actual newsletter in hand won't be ready till probably the first or second week in August. Got to get my months right here. So first or second week in August, but things are filling up already. So if you're interested in some things, you might want to check the website, franssewingcircle.com, and see what we've got going on there. Couple things that we're already full I want to show you, because this is our Hoop It Up. I don't know if you can see the same thing. It's called Fall Forest. And our first class of this, which is in September, is already full, but we have put in another session. So if you're interested in doing this in Hoop It Up, it just takes a 5x7 hoop, depending on the size of your hoop. That's how big you will make these individual blocks, but it can be done with as small as a 5x7 hoop. So that's our forest one. October Hoop It Up is actually going to be a Kimberbell event that is not full yet. We do have 2 sessions already on there, and this is a 2-day Kimberbell event. And this is Home Sweet Spooky Home, and this is one of the projects in there. I actually have 3 out of the 4 made up here. I'm working on a little house that lights up, but we've got, the Batty Flyaway pillow with some little 3-dimensional bats on here. And the cutest little thing, I'm going to be make a couple more of these in different sizes, because several sizes of this comes with the class USB stick. And this is a great little decoration pumpkin for both Halloween and Thanksgiving, or all of fall. So that's September. October. November, we are doing Candy Cane Lane, which is going to be a bench pillow by Kimberbell, and I actually don't have a picture of that. Don't have much of anything on that yet, but we've already got 1 session full. So if you're interested in working on a bench pillow, that will be an all-day Hoop It Up class in November. Okay, so what I promised today was to look at sewing on knits. So I've already got this dress, which you probably can't see the whole thing there. This dress started. I've got the neckline done. I have to finish sewing it down with my double needle, because I just hooked up my double needle today. But neckline done, and 1 seam done, the shoulders, the sleeves put in. So I just wanted to show you how I set up my machine. If I'm sewing on a regular sewing machine and not a serger, you can still do knits. So I doubt you can see these, especially on that angle. So most of your modern sewing machines, any computerized sewing machine, probably has a knit stitch on it. I like to call it the lightning bolt stitch, because that's what it kind of looks like, a lightning bolt. I have not made this pattern before, so I'm not absolutely sure how it's going to fit. So I'm not going to use the lightning bolt stitch, because from experience, and if I'm going to start sewing, I better put on my my microphone here. But from experience, I know that is very difficult to take out. So if you don't have the lightning bolt stitch, or you just want to be a little more careful, I choose a zigzag stitch, and I take that very narrow. I go to like 1.5, and I also bring my stitch length down to this shows the whole zigzag, so it's 3.0, but so 1.5, somewhere between 1.5 and 3. And okay, so I've got a few pins holding my edge together, and it depends on how comfortable you are. I used to tell people I've been sewing for over 50 years, and pretty soon I got to add another decade to that. So we'll just say probably over 55 years I've been sewing. So I am fairly comfortable handling fabric, and I didn't bother to put a lot of pins in this. But please put, when you're sewing a seam, you want to keep those two edges together. And this particular pattern has a 3/8 inch seam allowance, so that's what I'm sewing that. Now, since this is a zigzag, it's not going to be going real fast, and I'm just going to bring my edges together as I sew. And of course, it's going to give me difficulty because I'm on camera today. Okay. The other thing I failed to do was to tell the machine I was sewing knits. Now, if you have a machine that you can choose what you are actually doing, I'm going to set that up all over again. If you have a machine that allows you to do that, what my machine does when I tell it I'm sewing a knit is it loosens up my presser foot pressure, because your knit has stretch in all directions, and if your presser foot pressure is a little bit lighter, it's less likely to stretch that out as you sew. So some machines have an adjustment up here, some machines have an adjustment on the side, but if you can lighten up your presser foot pressure, that is going to make your life a little bit easier. The other thing, this knit is behaving very well today. Some knits, once you cut them, they want to roll up on the edges. If you have a knit that wants to roll up on the edge, I just got a little off there. That's why it's worthwhile to pin. But if you have a knit that wants to roll up on the edge, a little hint is to put some starch on it. This is a best press starch, which is a little bit better for fabrics and for sewing than some of the other starches out there, but it's also not quite as strong as some of your other starches, so you might need to spray a little bit more. But that will help stabilize the edges of your knit. You're just going to spray the edges where you want to sew, and that will help keep it from rolling up on you. That's one of the tricks to help make knits easier to sew. Always take out your pins as you come to them, no matter what the pin says, if you can sew over it or not. If your needle nicks that pin, it may not break the pin and it may not break your needle, but it will help dull your needle faster. Speaking of needles, when you're sewing a knit, please you can get away with the universal needle, which is what I have in this machine, because I was doing this at home, I would have put one of my stretch needles in, but a stretch or a ballpoint needle is going to not cause any breaks or holes in your knit when you're done. So I've got that seam sewn, and you see I still have some stretch to it. That's what's important, is you want to keep stretch in it. If we didn't have stretch, if I started to pull on it when I was wearing it, it would go pop, 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 the seam. So you want to sew your seams with some type of a stretch stitch if you're working on a knit. Now, I'm going to look a little bit at about hemming this knit. Now, I have a hem stitch on this machine, which I could use, which would give it some stretch, but I don't really like that look. Now, what I did here, and I'm going to move over to the other machine here, which I've already got set up for doing my hem, but is I have stabilized, let's move over, Micah. It might jerk a little bit here for a second, everybody. So this machine, I have a twin needle set up on it, and I've actually did a little bit of samples, because when you put a twin needle on it, and I know you can't see these because the threads match so well, but when you put a twin needle on, you're actually getting a zigzag on the back side, and that makes it also a stretchy seam. So I did a few samples here because it tends to pull up in the middle. So I loosen up my tension on top till I'm not getting that pull up, so it's laying flat. The other thing that I did, which is I used a double-sided basting tape on here. And what that does is it actually is stuck to both sides here, and it's holding my hem in place. It's also keeping this from stretching out as I sew it. I'm going to take this off so I have a free arm on my machine. Now the other thing is a double needle, you have to work on the right side of the fabric because that's the side that the double needle shows on. So the first thing I want to do is see where I can sew this hem so that I'm just catching that raw edge. And I can do that if I'm up to the 20 line on here. So now I'm going to put my sleeve in here. And the other thing I always like to start and stop on a seam, because that I also know that's going to be kind of underneath, so it's not going to, where I stop and start is not going to show. So that's a hint. Anytime you're doing a hem, start and stop on the seam. So once I have my double needle in there, I'm just keeping this on the number that I knew I'm going to catch that hem. Going to sew around till I come up to where I started. Going to do a little tie off there. All right, and there, again, not sure how that shows up on there, but a beautiful double hem. Looks like I've done that with a cover stitch serger, but you can do it with your sewing machine. So I am almost done with my dress. I've got to sew around my neck and do my hem on my other sleeve and then try it on for my hem. I'm going to have, can you come back on me here? Thank you. Okay, I am going to get this dress finished up today. It's going to be hanging here in the store. So if you want to see some of these techniques and how they worked out, it will be here, although I'm dying to wear it, so maybe have it on instead of hanging on the mannequin. But that's how easy it is to sew knits. So one other thing about sizing a knit, you can buy a pattern for knits and it's sized to accommodate the fact that you've got stretch in it, so it's going to fit a little tighter. You can't take a knit pattern and sew a woven in it. It's going to come out way too tight. If you find a pattern you really like and you want to sew it in a knit, you can do that. If it's made for wovens, you can make it on a knit. You might find that you want to take it in a little bit so it fits a little bit closer than it would have in a woven. But woven patterns can be used for knits. Knit patterns cannot be used for wovens. That's another little hint today. And thank you for joining me at Friday at Fran's, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for something new.